Yeah.
And speaking of, some people said some mean things. Tell me what they said.
Well, so when I won, people actually legitimately called me a girlfriend account. So the backstory of that is when I told you that people actually have a second team, which is illegal. And there's people who actually
basically they're just doubling their chances illegally.
Yeah, and so you can get weekly prizes with Supercoach. So round prizes. So the biggest highest score gets $1,000.
Yep.
But so people would have their overall team, and then they would get their girlfriend's email, Jenny would do, and you would see all these females, and even Tim, who
is it always Jenny? Is she always called? Is it like, can it be Karen? Can we make it up
ourselves? So literally, it was like girlfriend account, and even someone made a meme about me about the face that you make when you cheat.
That's disgusting.
When I won, it is.
Oh well, they're laughing from the other side of their face now.
Yeah, and I know. I actually champed somebody because everyone's like, "Oh, I'd like to get advice from her," and I literally went, "Oh, anytime, champ." And I'm like, "Actually, if you want to learn about my methods and my strategies, and you can listen to this podcast, or this podcast." And that's one really thing I'm glad I did is, a couple of years ago, I made the change from Challis to Supercoach Mama, which I turned myself around because when I first started, I called myself Captain Danger, and I pretended to be male. I mean, I didn't say I was male, but everyone just presumed I was male.
Yeah.
And I would just really just be in the background. And then I don't know what changed. I all went from there to Supercoach Mama.
So is this your Twitter handle?
Yeah, it's my Twitter handle. I mean, it's at Challis, but my actual name is Supercoach Mama.
Yeah.
But I actually developed a really, really lovely people on most of them. There's some not on Twitter. And I actually pushed myself, especially this year, I said yes when people ask me on podcasts. So I've been on the actual one in Victoria, the Supercoach podcast, and the one from South Australia, the Phantom's Lair. I've also been on a couple of others, but I've pushed myself out of my comfort zone and actually done that. So if someone and I'm very active on Twitter, quite active. So I think people said, I mean, it hurt for a little bit, but I felt that I'm really glad that I still wasn't,
Yeah, that's right. You're owning it, right? I mean, why not? And I mean, ultimately, this shouldn't be about the first woman to win Supercoach, and it's not. It's about Emily Challis winning Supercoach. But isn't that so great that in Australia we can have a woman beating 155,000 men?
Yeah, no, it's awesome. And lots of people know me. I've had these Twitter groups for a couple of years. So the highest other rank I've had in Supercoach was, I'd say only, but it was 690 a couple of years ago. But I was 57th in the BBL, which is the cricket one. So I've been quite competitive with that. But people knew me a lot. So, and I'm female, kind of do stick out a little bit. And
yes, that's right. Exactly. And good on you. I mean, just got to own it, right? And I guess that's really the interesting thing for me is just that what is it that turns someone from being a sports fan, naturally competitive? I mean, I've played you in, what would we call it, a game. We played a game the other week and she's incredibly competitive. We all stopped writing after like 30 seconds and 2 minutes later, Emily was still like writing everything she could think of. So obviously you're naturally competitive. You've got that maths analytical type of brain, and you wanted something when you had your kids to really light up your life in a different way. And I think that's just such a valuable thing for women to be able to say, yes, you can. It's okay to say that actually I love my kids, but sometimes they bore me to death. I mean, that's just the most normal thing in the world, right?
Yeah. And you need an outlet. And people call it mindfulness, but you just need an outlet. You need whatever it is. And
I started listening to true crime podcasts. That didn't get me anywhere. I haven't even committed a murder yet.
Well, or have you? You're very good at it.
I'll know how to anyway. I'll be very well educated.
Yeah. It's not always Supercoach. I mean, you'll laugh at this, but when I was actually really stressed from Supercoach when I was #1, and the weeks were coming into it, and it was funny. By about round 19, I've been #1 for a couple of weeks. And part of me just, life was hectic. I can't remember what lockdown it was, and I'm just like, I want to stop now. I want a couple of days of just going, but I couldn't, because I'm like, oh, it's so close, and I just had to keep going. I mean, on a marathon, and they call it the wall. What do they call it? Yeah. And you're just like, oh, I'm not, you got to keep going. Anyway, just random jazz and a glass of wine, and I stood outside, watched the stars, listened to jazz for about half an hour, and oh man, I felt so good after that.
Wonderful. Yes, that's right. And aren't you glad you did push through? And now, you're the happy winner of 50 grand as well. I mean, you can go to as many jazz concerts as you want.
Yeah.
For a bit. Why not?
That's right. Oh, yeah. A jazz lounge when you...
Oh, extra relaxing. Well, look, it's been so wonderful to talk, Emily. Is there anything else you wanted to share with our viewers, any other kind of strategies if someone's looking at turning a hobby or an interest and just getting better at it? I mean, I think you've said, some really good things about perseverance and research and staying the course and being visible. Is there anything else you wanted to add?
Well, you really got to work on your decision-making skills. I mean, whatever it is. Well, there's two things. You really got to learn to ask for advice and taking advice, but also learning when it's your turn that someone can't make those decisions for you. Whatever that is. I mean, but that's something that I really worked on, is working on how you perform, how you best perform. So do you work well under pressure? What are your strengths? How well do you learn? How well? And for me, I'm a muller. I literally like to just
up to here.
So I like to use the subconscious brain a lot. I like to plan an idea of so I'm thinking of so and so and so and so to trade, or for example, and I'll just go plan it in my brain, and I'll just let the subconscious
put it in the background.
In the background, and then I might think about it, and then literally a couple of days later, I'll have a pretty good plan. But rather than all this last minute stuff or just been trying to work it out, but I just like to couple of days.
That's great advice, Emily. That's really, really good advice. And I think mature advice, because, when you're younger, you tend to think that you can just problem solve everything all at once, right? I'm going to give myself this really short deadline and I'm just going to try to force, a round peg into a square hole, or whatever the saying is.
Yeah.
But, no, I think that's wonderful advice. Stand up and show us your jacket.
I haven't got my track pants on. I don't know. It's got Supercoach Mama on the back.
Oh, so cute. That's terrific. Well, I love it, Emily. I think it's such an inspiring story, and I hope you take every media opportunity that you're given, and that you build your own podcast and your own brand. Why not?
Why not?
Yeah.
I'm still mulling over it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, you take care. Have a good evening.
Yeah, thanks.
See you, Emily. Bye-bye.